Hi, my name is Pinky Jangra and I'm going to be talking to you today about stress. Now, first and foremost, I just want to clarify what type of stress I'm going to talk to you about. I'm not talking about the kind of stress we experience when we are going through an intermittent sort of acute challenge where we're going out of our comfort zone and we feel a little bit stressed. I'm talking about very extreme stress that really debilitates people, and chronic stress, which is something where you're basically experiencing stress every single day for prolonged periods of time. These two types of stress are very detrimental to us, and they're very common, unfortunately, in the modern world, particularly in Western civilization. But within the last 12 months, with COVID, with lockdowns, our stresses have really been exacerbated. And we've been faced with challenges and changes and uncertainty in a way that we could never have imagined we would have to deal with. And unfortunately, one of the outcomes of that is that people have really experienced extreme and chronic and heightened levels of stress. The reason I'm making this video is because that's really bad for us, and we really need to learn what stress is and also how we can learn to manage our own stress, which will be better for us mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, individually and collectively. So what I'm going to start with is I'm going to give you some basics around what stress actually is. So let's have a little look at that. If you could just imagine that that's your brain, obviously not biologically accurate, but imagine that that's your brain. And there's a part of the bottom of your brain, which we are going to call the amygdala. Some people call it the chimp brain, some people call it the reptilian brain, the mammalian brain. It's very animalistic. It's very instinctive. And this is a very old, primitive part of your brain. It's had hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years, when we talk about the reptilian elements of it, many years of practice in doing what it does. So the next question is, well, what does it do? It governs your stress response. So this is what happens. A threat comes in and it basically triggers this part of your brain, and it says, right, I need to get away from this threat, or I need to fight this threat. And that triggers what we call the fight, flight response. There is also freeze, but I won't talk about that today. But essentially those are exactly what they say. So a threat comes in, I need to fight it away, or I need to run away from it, which is the flight, and that's going to ensure my survival. This is all about survival. And what it does when it gets triggered is it needs to tell your body what to do, because when you're going to fight or run, you need to have certain things going on in your body that allow you to do that. So what happens is it sends hormones into your body. It's a very funny looking human being, and essentially the hormones that it's sending into the body, the main ones are adrenaline and cortisol, and these are going to send instructions into your body. Some of those instructions, for example, will be we need to increase our heart rate and pump blood and oxygen to the extremities, to our limbs, to our hands, to our feet, because we might need to fight or we might need to run away. So we need to make sure that these parts of our body have the energy and the oxygen, and the muscles there have what they need to fight or flight. So the blood pressure is going up, the arteries are pumping blood really hard around the body, your breathing also shifts and becomes more fast and shallow. That's essentially what is happening in order to govern the fight or flight and enable the flight or flight reaction. It's really hard to say fight or flight reaction, and it is a reaction, very reactive experience. But also what happens with these hormones, it says, well, we need these things, but there's also things we don't need right now. If I'm busy fighting a threat, what I don't need my digestion, and I don't need my immune system. So your immune system and your digestion goes off. Have you ever noticed how when you're really nervous or stressed, you get funny feelings in your belly? Because things are changing in there. And often people who experience a lot of extreme stress and chronic stress tend to get sick, because you've turned off your immune system. So basically, that's what's going on in the body. There's also something else really important that's going on when you're in your stress response, is you also turn off the more advanced part of your brain, which is called the prefrontal cortex, or we can call it the executive center. And this part of your brain is there to do things like planning, ideas, creativity, forward thinking, strategic thinking, intuition, inspiration, and really helpful things to have. And so when you're in your stress response as a human, this basically turns off that part of your brain. Now here's the thing. In and of itself, this is not a bad thing. It has a purpose. But it's an animalistic, instinctive, primitive response. And the whole point of this is to save you physically. So when we lived out in the caves many years ago, if there was a physical threat from an animal or maybe a rival tribe or something like that, this would get triggered in order for this to happen in our body so that we could escape the threat or fight it. The problem we have is that what's supposed to happen is that once that threat is over, this all relaxes and we go into what we call rest and digest. So digestion goes back on, immune systems go back on, healthy, balanced functioning of the body. And you're supposed to go back into that state. So you have a threat, it triggers this, you fight or flight, you deal with it, you've hopefully survived, you're all good. And now we can come back into a healthy state of being, a calm, balanced, healthy state. The problem we have in the modern world is this here. We're not fighting and running away from lions while we live in our caves. What else have we got coming at us in these days? We've got money issues. We've got the economy. We've got COVID. We've got lockdowns. We've got politics. We've got family. We've got technology challenges. We're running cars. Might have a problem with our car. We've got children. We've got homeschooling. We've got issues on the internet. We might have things on the internet that are upsetting us, and we're worried about the wide world. We see news in our faces all day, every day, telling us about what's happening on the other side of the world. And all we've got issues at work. We might have lost our jobs. We may have issues with our boss in our team. A project isn't going well. We lost a client. I could go on forever. I'll add one more. We also have the things that are coming at us in our own brain. I'm not good enough. I can't succeed. I failed. No one loves me. Whatever it is, all of our own thoughts and our own worries about who we think we are, our past, our future, and so on, bombarding this bit of our brain, going threat, threat, threat. See, we used to just be looking at our physical survival, but now we're actually trying to protect our psychological survival as well. Our beliefs, our identity, who we think we are, how we think things should work. And if anyone challenges that, it triggers a threat. So if someone challenges your beliefs, the same part of your brain will actually become activated as if you were being physically threatened and harmed. So there's a lot of stuff bombarding day in, day out, your threat response, your survival response, your fear response, your stress response, whatever you want to call it. What does that mean? You are constantly triggering this process. Heart rate goes up, blood pressure goes up, digestion stops, immune system stops. This is why when you're anxious, you feel restless, because your body thinks you need to run from a threat. But the thing that's a threat is something that's just going on in your mind and may not even be happening in the physical experience. So we have a very primitive system trying to handle very modern threats, and it doesn't work. And this is why I think we have the problem that we have with so many people struggling with stress. And actually, if you think about it, what do we need to handle these sorts of threats? We need this part of the brain. Creativity, ideas, inspiration, logic, rationale, thinking. This is what we need. Optimism, hope, future focus. But you can't do that if you're in this state, because these two parts of the brain don't function at the same time. You cannot be in defense mode and growth mode, or resistance and resilience at the same time. And actually, when you're in your stressed out state, your eyes, all they're focusing on is the problem. You can't even access solutions from there. So this is what I do when I train people in resilience. It's about saying, well, how do you manage this? Because this is very deeply ingrained programmed experience. And if you haven't become self-aware or done any work to actually manage yourself and develop yourself, this will just be running your life if you're in extreme states of stress. So we need to learn, how do we retrain our body and our mind to not go into this state so much when a modern day threat hits us. That's something we have to practice and retrain ourselves to do. We can also look at the outside world and the threats that we have, the threats, and see, are there any that we might be able to change? We can't control everything, but there may be some things that you can actually change in your own life or in your own surroundings, your own environment, that will actually at least reduce some of these so you're not getting triggered as much. So it's really a holistic, system-based approach to managing stress, reducing our resistance. And then when we're calming this down through tools that you can use, psychological tools, emotional, behavioral, spiritual, so on, and physical as well, we can calm this down. And now that means this part of our brain can start to open up again because it feels safe. It knows that there's no threat. So now I can relax, and now I can access my higher thinking, higher consciousness. This is your lowest state of consciousness. This is animalistic. As a human, you are afforded a very high state of consciousness, potentially, if you use it. And that's what this is about. And this is where the amazing things happen in life. Great ideas, creativity, innovation, success, growth, happiness, well-being. They come from there. I'm not saying we don't need this. I'm not saying we're going to hate on this. But it's just not. And there may be times when we need it. If you're, I don't know, maybe you do get chased by a lion one day in your life. I don't know. But that's where it came from. If you imagine, like, we're being chased by wild animals and we have to run away. Maybe you may need it. It's not a bad thing. But it's a primitive response, survival mechanism, trying to deal with modern threats. And the two don't work. They don't match. So we need to consciously evolve ourselves so that this tones down unless it's really needed. And this is what we tone up. And that's what, for me, in the way I teach resilience, that's what resilience is all about. Tone that down, ramp this up. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that's given you some things to think about. Take care, and I'll speak to you soon.